doing this alone, so I gotta get it all set up so I can see stuff. I think I can do it. Yes. There we go. Now I can read your comments and be on video. Hello, hello, hello. What are your questions? I figured there would be lots of questions about it. This is live. I'm good. Sell it online. I have had people ask me if I would sell this, and I actually did sell a commission of this already, one. To somebody that was willing to spend what it costs to make it, because it's very expensive. I won't sell this one because I do want to use this in more videos. Ooh, okay, here we go. How many hours did I spend on sanding? That is a good question. I don't know. I would probably say 40 at least, maybe longer. My favorite part of the whole project, I'd say my favorite part of the project was probably teaching myself to CAD model, even though it was incredibly frustrating. It was, how should I put it, satisfying. And now I'm not nearly as afraid of doing that because I've done it. So now I know how to do it to an extent. Like, I'm not good at it, but I'm not, it's not this new wondrous thing that I've never tried before and I don't know how it's going to go. I actually feel like I can do it. So. What would I do differently on the next one? Okay, so I'm going to try to answer as many questions as I can, but I won't necessarily see them because that is moving and I can't look at it constantly. What would I do different on the next one? I had one of my Patreon patrons is the head of the props department for Yale University, actually, and he contacted me and told me about a technique they use where they use extremely thin maple wood veneer on foam props in theater to make them look like wood. But even though it's super thin, it's also it has a really high tensile strength. It's less expensive than buying carbon fiber veneer, which is very expensive. So on the next one, what I would do differently, now that I know about that, is I would make the form, and instead of trying to fill everything and then putting a layer of fiberglass over it, so that I'd have a nice, even, level surface to do the carbon fiber on top of, I would use maple veneer on the outside of it. I don't have any other, I've never seen it before, so I don't know how much it weighs, but that is, I believe that's what I do, because that seems like it would be the best way to eliminate a fair amount of work. I mean, it's not going to take away all of it, but it'll probably take away, you know, the however many hours I spent trying to prepare the foam core for the carbon fiber to go on top of it. My Instagram is Jairus Ball. I see that one. Ducky, glad I inspire you. Working with wood's a good place to start. It might seem like I put a lot of effort into the projects, and I do, and it seems like I do, but I like doing that, so it doesn't feel like effort to me. I've made stuff to sell before, but only the did the Blades of Chaos, or not the Blades of Chaos, the Dragon Glass stuff from Game of Thrones. I did those, and those were intended to be sold, but typically I don't. Plan for the sword's future for this. It's going to hang on my wall, and I'm going to use it in more test videos. Hi to, oh no, I missed it. Hold on. Hi, Rodrigo Sanchez. How late is it here? It is 6:20 p.m. I have a few dream projects. Could this kill someone? Absolutely. This would definitely kill someone. It wouldn't take a whole lot. First of all, because it's so heavy. Not that it's that heavy, but it's heavy enough that if you hit somebody with it, it would break a bunch of ribs. It would be a real problem if you got smacked with this thing. I haven't played FF7 Remake yet. I've watched a lot of videos of it, but I haven't been able to play it because I don't have a console to be able to play it on. Alright, I gotta catch back up so that it moves for me. Oh my goodness. There we go. Everybody that donates to me, BetaFan73 said, are the CAD files available? I'm not keeping them under wraps, but I do feel bad that all the people that are on Patreon donate, and I have a hard time doing all of this by myself to get extra content out and videos out early so that they have access to them early. So one of the benefits that I give my patrons for helping support the channel, because they allow me to have more time to be able to do projects and do them to a further extent, is I provide the CAD files and like the STL files from the stuff that I make to them. The guard on the Blades of Chaos, I don't know how to make that because that's something you'd have to shape in Blender, I think, and I don't know how to use that. So I bought that online, so I can't distribute that because that is that's somebody else's stuff. That would be stealing if I bought it and then distributed it. So, or whatever they call that. Brock asked, do you listen to music while you work? I do, if I'm not filming, which isn't necessarily that much. I film a significant amount of what I actually, when I'm working, I film a significant amount of that, so, and then I pull out the best parts or the most interesting parts for the videos. So there's a lot of times where while I'm working, I don't have music going. If there's something that takes a really long time and it's boring and it's redundant and there's nothing to show you guys that I think is of any interest or continues the story or the adventure of whatever I'm making coming to a final product, then I'll listen to music, but it's not terribly often. Are you gonna hide it under your bed like I do my sword? I don't, no, this is gonna get hung on the wall. I have my Columbus baseball bat under my bed because I think that's funnier. The next project, I'm not positive what I'm going to do for the next project. I actually said in the first comment on, or my pinned comment that I put on the video, that I don't know for sure what the next project is going to be. I had a potential sponsorship on a major build that I really want to do fall through, and that sponsorship was necessary for me to be able to do the build. So now I have to do something else. And I was hoping it was going to happen before this one, and then that didn't happen, and it got pushed, and then it didn't happen at all anyway, so. Are you all my secret little child? No, I do want to do any other My Hero Academia build. I have 2 ideas for turning myself into 2 of the superheroes from that show. I'm not going to say anything because I want them to be a surprise. Skyrim. I do want to do something from Skyrim. I don't know what the Daedric is, but no, I never did give up on this thing. And this wasn't my biggest build. I can't emphasize enough how difficult it was to edit this video. So some of the slow motion footage we got, we couldn't get it off of the phones that we filmed it with. It was corrupting when it would come off of the phone. So a friend of mine actually found an app that he could use to convert the video to an extent on his phone and then transfer it to Google Drive, and that was the only way I ended up getting that footage. So first of all, it was difficult to get that footage. Second of all, my memory cards started failing in the GoPros, and that's because they're so old. I've been using them the entire time I've been doing YouTube, and I ordered new ones. I got new ones, but they were failing on this project, and it was causing me to lose footage, and there was stuff I didn't realize I had lost. So those were the initial problems. Then, after I started editing the video, I had a really hard time getting everything pulled together. And when I would start to get things pulled together, I'd get really excited about it, and I'd forget to save frequently, and then my program would crash and it would erase a bunch of stuff. And when it erased a bunch of stuff, like, it's not it's not just the amount of time that you worked that gets erased, because then you have to figure out when your last autosave or when your last save was from, figure out what point you were at in the editing process, and try to restart from there. And then if you liked what you did, you have to try to redo that. Basically, if you lost 20 minutes of editing work, you're going to lose at least an hour on top of that, because it'll take you probably it takes me probably close to an hour to redo what I did and figure out where I was at and all of those things. So editing the video for this was almost harder than making the thing. Let me see if I can find another question. Hello? I'm not reading that, Steven. I was happy I was able to complete it too. I'd like to visit the Hacksmith this year. It depends when stuff opens up. The crossguard is made out of carbon fiber 3D printed. It's 3D printed carbon fiber infused plastic. It's PLA. I wanted to do it out of nylon. There was no way I could get carbon fiber nylon shipped to me in time to be able to print it out of nylon. I really wish I had, because actually it's starting to break. I bumped it against my vise and I shattered the corner, and I tried to glue it back together a little bit, but then in the testing of it, that part was resting against my arm a lot, and when I would change directions with the sword, it would hit my arm and it cracked it again, and then it got worse. So I wish I had the nylon for it, but yeah, all the stuff that's 3D printed is carbon fiber composite as well. That way it's in keeping, and the whole thing is carbon fiber composite, including the handle. Well, I mean, with the exception of the titanium blade edge, the lead core and the handle and the pommel being cast out of lead, everything is carbon fiber composite. Well, and the cups are just PLA, and then the foam core that's inside of it. But ooh, if you want to see me make Thanos' sword, the Hacksmith made, well, I helped make it. So I helped weld all the pieces together and get the majority of the assembly of the blade sections done for Thanos' sword that was made on the Hacksmith's channel. And if you want to see an awesome one, check that out, because they hooked it up to some ridiculously powerful motor and spun it around like a helicopter blade and threw stuff at it. It was outrageously dangerous. I don't know how well I speak Canadian. What I think of making an indestructible dummy, I've thought about it. I'm going to rebuild the dummy that I screwed up, and a way that I could do that is, it wouldn't be indestructible, but I could cover it with Kevlar. If I did a Kevlar dummy, that would be pretty cool, because then I wouldn't, but I mean, then it also wouldn't show the ability of stuff that I'm using on it, because nothing would be able to, very little would be able to go through it, because Kevlar is super, ultra hard to cut. Somebody just asked about My Hero Academia projects. I just talked about that a moment ago. Yeah, I have 2 more in mind that I want to do. I just don't know when I'm going to get to them. Forged in Fire. Would I do well on that? I can't remember. Forged in Fire is the one where you actually have to forge something. I think it is. It's probably why it's called Forged in Fire. No, I wouldn't do terribly on that, because I've never forged anything before, and the guys that are on there are awesome. So, if you tried to block, Bookie 86 asked if I tried to block with this, would it break? And I don't know. I don't know how strong. I know it's really strong. Like, I wasn't worried about standing on it when it was spanning the 2 chairs in the beginning of the video. But strength for weight is different than strength for impacts, because the shorter the time momentum is absorbed, the higher the weight over time goes up. So even if you have something flying that doesn't weigh very much and it impacts something, but there's like very little cushioning, so the time period that it makes that impact is very short, the force that is dumped into it goes outrageously high. And that's why carbon fiber is not good at taking impacts. It's incredibly strong. And cutting soft stuff with a sword I knew would be fine. But as far as a sword hitting the side of this, that's the weakest part. It would probably crack it, but I don't think it would break it to the point that it would just fold in half. I think it would just superficially crack it, and it would weaken it, but it would mostly look like a superficial crack. And composite's really difficult to repair, so I'm not willing to do that because I don't want to break it. I don't want to say what editing software I'm using because it had so many problems. I don't know if I can get in trouble for saying mean stuff about it. Chris Landis, thank you very much, and I'm glad you found my channel, and I will keep up the good work. I love doing this stuff, so no sign of me quitting anytime soon. Favorite project so far? I don't know. That's a good question. It's probably the last 3 projects. I like all of my projects though. When am I going to do another test with the sword? Well, I don't want to just be a Buster Sword channel, so I'm going to do some other projects, but I have plans to be doing versus basically videos where I'm testing things that I've made against each other, or how should I put this? Testing things against each other, or testing things again in ways that I should have done the first time. Like for example, my most viral video is when I punched through a hollow core MDF door with the power fist. And everybody said, oh, you punched, that door was made out of paper. Well, that's what MDF doors look like. And it looked like it wasn't very difficult to get through because the power fist went through it so easily. But that's a standard MDF interior door in any house in the US. They're all built that way. Unless you have wood doors inside, but most people don't because solid wood doors cost a significant amount of money. After that video, everybody said they wanted to see me punch through a metal door, so I did that. I got an exterior steel door that had solid wood internal parts and steel cladding on the outside, and it was pre-mounted, bolted into an all-metal frame, standard steel exterior door stuff from a construction auction, and I punched through that. So that's kind of like what I'm going to do with this. Everybody wanted to see tatami mats. I'll cut them in the future. I just don't know when I'll be able to get the mats and when I'll have the time to film the video of me testing this. And I don't want to just do tatami mats. I'd like to do some other stuff. And for that tatami mat video, I'd like to see if I can find someone that lives near me that knows how to use swords, so I can have a sword expert come on, use this thing, give his thoughts on it, because I know that you guys want to know it, and I know I want to know it, because it would just be cool to see what they think of my attempt at making the most functional Buster sword that I can. Next sharp pokey thing would be, I'm thinking about making the axes from Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the new one that the trailer just came out for. They look really cool, and I would like to make them, but I just don't think they're terribly interesting. I've done everything that it would take to build those in the past, and I'm afraid that project would end up being frustrating, because it's just time consuming to make something like that. And it would be fun to make them really pretty and really nice, but at the same time I know they would take a lot of time. So I'm not sure if I'm going to do those or not. How did I get the blades straight? Time and effort. The titanium wasn't straight, and I knew that the titanium, because it's so small and it's over such a long distance, it wouldn't be able to put enough force into the foam to force the foam to be straight. So when I did the single layer of fiberglass to level the core, it also doubled as it's really minutely thin, a super tiny layer to basically put tension on the foam in either direction so that it wasn't floppy. And then after I had this vacuum bag, I didn't show it in the video because I had to take it upstairs to a room that I had set up that was all warm so that this would set up quickly. And it was all wrapped in the bagging. There wasn't much room in the room because of the heater and the props that I had to have this thing set up the way that it was. And it once I got it set up, then I had levels up there that I used to make sure that it was sitting straight in the bag, because that was the last opportunity that I'd have to try to adjust it. But right before I started doing that, it was super, super straight, which I was really concerned about, because I've read, there's a lot of stuff you read online and you don't know if it's true or not. I've read that when composites cure, when the resin cures in composite, it can contract to an extent. I don't know if it contracts enough that it makes the fibers move. If that had happened, it could have potentially warped the blade, so I was worried about that. And I made sure that it was perfectly vertical while it was curing, you know, blade straight up, so that it didn't potentially warp during the cure process, because it takes, the resin that I used is somewhere between 24 to 48 hours for full cure, so I was worried that it might go off while it was slightly off to the side. How can you get started making props? I guess play with foam. Everything, like a lot of the stuff that I build isn't props. Everything I try to make everything that I make functional. But how I got into making is building like plastic models, model cars, and you know, now I do Gundams and Legos. Seeing how the mechanical parts in those work and move, and how stuff fits together. Getting good at sanding and painting. Just having really good dexterity, knowing how to use the tools, put things together. I think that's really important, and those are the ways that you develop those skills. And then it's just a matter of not being afraid to start projects and try them. And if you fail, it just doesn't matter, because at least you tried it. Budget cloud weapon, the nail bat. Yeah, I saw that in the game and I thought that was funny. I don't have a nail bat, but Star Wars clone armor. See, armor is difficult because to make it accurate, it's so many pieces. It's so many pieces, and it's to make every piece accurate, and then to get it to attach to your body in a way that you can still move in it is difficult. So that's why I haven't really moved towards doing like big armor suits, because they're not easy. I do have a Mandalorian project planned for the end of the year when the new season starts. For Bro Decent. Let me see, where was I? Thanks for saying amazing job, Archeron. Oh, how much sleep have I lost? Man, that is... I haven't lost sleep, I just didn't get that much. We'll put it that way. But it doesn't matter. I feel fine. I don't push myself to the point where it's going to be a problem. I do work really, really long hours, and I don't sleep very much, but I've never slept very much. I just don't need to, I guess. Pogo stick sword. I have no idea how that would even work. 1323 pieces. I made one of cardboard. Awesome. It takes forever to 3D print armor. It's Shadiversity's brother. I don't know what that is. Yeah. I'll pick it up and show it to you. My body's stuck this time. I can't tell what the camera's seeing right now, but you can still see some of the dirt on it from when I used it. Like the duct tape from the dummy messed up the silver part. But it's all just residue that wipe off if I really tried to clean it. But that makes it more what's the word for it? It's part of the sentimental value in it, because it's like the memory of chopping up that dummy with it. Won't be a reference for how rigid it is. I can think of something where you could stand on it like you did. I'd say it's, instead of a 2x4, like the comparison for how rigid this is, the weird thing is it looked like it was flexing slightly in that shot, but it wasn't. My buddy that was holding the camera, he got down and looked at it to tell me if it was flexing right before we filmed that scene. And when he actually got down and he could look at it perfectly level, he said that there was zero flex in it. He couldn't see any flex at all. So if I had to compare it to something, I'd say it would probably be like equivalent in stiffness to maybe a 2x12. Probably. I mean, 2x12 would be similar in size, but that would be also very similar in stiffness. This is actually probably stiffer than a 2x12. This is incredibly stiff. Like this will, with having 5 layers of carbon fiber on each side, and then that little internal structure for the blade, I have no idea how much weight it would take to make this bend. But it wouldn't bend, it would just crack in half at that point, because carbon fiber is stiff. It's not, doesn't flex. That's the point of it. So you use fiberglass when you want something to flex. So the ideal material for this is S-glass fiberglass. because it is flexible. It's not rigid like carbon fiber. So that would be the way that you should make a sword like this. But a fiberglass Buster sword just doesn't have the same thing. You know, it's not like carbon fiber. Carbon fiber is so cool. It looks awesome and it has really amazing properties. But S-glass is more flexible. It'd be better to build a giant sword out of fiberglass. Yeah. Anyway. This doesn't hold a whole lot of impact. That's why they make race car parts out of carbon fiber, because it doesn't flex, so then you don't have to worry about flexion changing, you know, the geometry of your suspension or your wing bending whenever you're doing 150 miles an hour. Stop a bullet or propel me quickly, Big Chunky said that. Yeah, I've had some ideas for armor that I'd like to try. A lot of the materials that I need to be able to do it are kind of expensive, and I'm not exactly positive how I would do it yet. Or propel me quickly, that's the Aquaman build. So yeah, I want to do that. That's just, I have all the stuff for it, but it's going to take, the Aquaman project is going to take a significant amount of time. I'm afraid there's so little interest in Aquaman right now because I missed the movie release. But if I do that video set, it'll garner very little attention, but I am going to do it this year just because I have the time and the ability, and it's coming up to where it's going to start to warm up to the point where I actually can use it. The other thing is there's a huge amount of preparation for that project. I had to learn the CAD software first before I started making the parts for that. I've started making some of them, but they're far more difficult to make than these parts were for this. Another problem is I haven't been able to find a pool where I can test it, because I'm going to have to do testing with it. I have a huge water tank that I got to be able to test thrust on the motors, but I won't be able to test thrust versus speed on the motors until I have a pool to try them in, because the nearest lake that I could use to test in is 2 hours, I believe about 2 hours away. So I can't do that until it's warm outside anyway. So I need to find a pool, I need to find a lake, and I need to model some very complex parts in CAD before I can do that. How did I learn all this stuff? Well, it wasn't in school. I have my degree in finance. I've always liked to build stuff, and I just teach it to myself. There's so much information on the internet. A lot of times you'll find inaccurate information, but when you're trying it and you're messing up, and then you find the right information, you'll never forget it. So it doesn't matter. I'm not sure what Wayne Ogg is going to figure out. I didn't see that question, unless I answered it. What's dragon armor from? I'm guessing it's from game. Think about putting, okay, this is a good question. Did I think about putting carbon fiber over the 3D prints? The initial plan was to make a big carbon fiber sheet and cut these out of that sheet and then glue them to the surface. The problem with that was I didn't realize how many layers of, when you laminate and vacuum bag one layer of carbon fiber, it comes out to less than 0.01 of an inch thick. So to build up the thickness that I would need, and with all the different varying thicknesses of these, I would have to make multiple plates with different numbers of layers and then prep them and cut them and put them on. And I wanted to learn CAD, so I decided on just doing the 3D printed part. But initially these were supposed to be this way. But in order to cover them with carbon fiber would also be very difficult, very time consuming. But that is a really good question, because I actually was about to do that. But I'd be devastated if the next sword video, if this broke. It won't. I won't hit. I'll promise you this. I'm not going to hit anything that's so hard that it's going to just destroy this sword. Plus, I don't think it's possible for any human to swing this hard enough to just all out destroy it, unless it was like a world's strongest man and he hit something made of steel. That would be, or other hard metal. That would be pretty much the only way, and even then, it wouldn't mess it up that much. You're talking 10 layers of carbon, well, no, it would be 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Out here at the blade edge, basically, you have 14. There's a more. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, you have 14 at the blade edge, and then here you have 14 also. So basically, you're talking about 14 layers of carbon fiber, and you would be trying to push against it, and it would be fighting against its strongest property, or its strongest direction. That's a lot of layers of carbon fiber, and it's not going to happen. Like, that's not going to, it would take so much force. You'd probably break the handle off before you'd be able to, like, completely destroy the sword by hitting something super hard. Now, I don't want to mess it up like that either, but still. I do like Skyrim. I haven't played it, but I've watched some friends of mine play it a bunch. Tesla technology. I don't know a whole lot about Tesla technology. What do I do besides build stuff? That's pretty much it. Oh, I'm excited about all of my future projects. Okay, so Bojack asked this, and this is a good question. Couldn't you have plexiglass core with carbon fiber exterior? That way you still achieve hardness and flexibility. You can't, because the tensile strength of carbon fiber is very high, but it won't bend, right? So you're trying to, when you try to bend this, you're trying to stretch one layer and compress the other. So the top layers, like if you were to bend it down over something, you'd be trying to stretch the top layer. Well, carbon fiber doesn't stretch. It has an extremely high tensile strength, but it won't stretch. So it won't bend. If you put a core in it that is bendy, then you can't bend it because the carbon fiber won't bend. Because you have to think about it like this. Whichever is stiffer is going to break first if you're trying to bend it. So that's the whole principle of not using carbon fiber and fiberglass together. So if carbon fiber has strength that increases rapidly the more tension you put on, let's say it only stretches this much, right? So your strength grows as you reach that point of stretch. But with fiberglass, you can reach the same strength, but it's over this much stretch. Well, I'll do it like this, so it makes a little more sense. You can build something out of carbon fiber and fiberglass with like these two curves, but the strength that you're going to have total when you're done before it breaks is the addition of the strength of fiberglass at the point that the carbon fiber breaks. That's how much strength you'll have. So if you add the strength of the fiberglass at that point for each layer to however many layers of carbon fiber you have, that's how much strength your total piece will have, which is still a fair amount, but you're at that point, instead of doing the whole purpose of composites where you're taking two materials that have properties that don't make them very awesome and use the best two properties that they have and you put them together to make a material that's incredibly awesome, you'd be completely negating that by taking two composite materials and only being able to achieve the weakest of both of them, basically. I mean, and it's not necessarily the weakest, but it just doesn't net you a part that's nearly as strong as if you stuck with one over the other. So carbon fiber is more expensive than fiberglass, but S-glass is very expensive, and S-glass is much stronger than E-glass, and E-glass is almost everything that's out there. People don't use S-glass very much, and E-glass is still strong, but it's not comparable to carbon fiber like S-glass is. S-glass, I'm almost positive that S-glass is almost exactly the same strength as carbon fiber is, although it's more flexible, but I think it costs almost the same amount. Whereas E-glass gets close, but its strength to weight is lower and it's not as strong. Yeah, anyway, it's interesting learning about composites. I've always liked composites, so. Any other projects I'm planning on working on? Oh man, I'm planning on Aquaman and the Valhalla axes potentially. There's another. I have a couple of major builds that I am really looking forward to doing that I don't really talk about with anyone because I don't want somebody else to get a chance to do them first. I'm not building a display case. I'm just going to hang stuff on my wall. I live alone, so don't have to worry about anybody getting hurt. How did I start doing this stuff? It's actually kind of a funny story. One of my friends told me that I should do this. because I always did projects, not to this scale, but I always did cool projects. And he thought they were awesome, and he said, you know, you do this stuff anyway. Have you ever considered trying to start a business out of it? And I said, no, I hadn't, because I didn't think there was really any way to do it. And he talked to me about blogging. And I realized I don't like to write. I'm decent at writing. I think I could do it. I just don't enjoy it enough to do that. So I do like making videos instead of writing. So I started making YouTube videos. And I decided that I would make it would be a concerted effort. Like I would be dedicated to it and actually try to make it something I can make a living from. And I'm getting pretty close. Do I still have the /drive the Viper? Yes, I do. I don't get a chance to drive very much. I don't have a garage to put it in, so it's under a cover, and it takes time to take the cover off and put it in it, and the roof doesn't fit in the trunk, so I have to take the roof off and find a place for that if I want to take the top off of it, and then I have to take the windows out or whatever. I have to have extra time to be able to use that vehicle because it's not convenient. So since I've been so busy with stuff lately, I rarely drive it, but I do drive it sometimes. Should have gone to art school. The weight on the sword is 10 pounds, 11.3 ounces. ASA filament. I have never used ASA filament. I can't even remember if I've ever heard of it. Troy hurt you. He's most known for his armored bear protection suit. Oh, okay. I've seen the suit. I'm not familiar with the guy, but I know what you're talking about. I'm not going to hit anybody with a Buster sword. Not even if it's you asking me to. The garage that I film all my YouTube videos in, I built that garage, so I already did. But I need a bigger one. Because now I'm starting to get to the point where I have too many projects and too many tools to be able to fit in there very comfortably, and it's starting to become a problem. But I don't have the money to build a bigger garage, and I don't have a place to build one yet. So that'll be in the future. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles weapons, man, I'll tell you what, I was a huge TMNT fan when I was a kid, huge, and that would be cool, but I don't know how to do that and make it really interesting. Ooh, what percent size would it be to make this optimal? That's a good question. This is longer than, this is 6'1". I'm not sure what the biggest normal swords ever were. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I can't remember how long a greatsword is. Maybe they were about this length. But I think a typical sword is only 3 to 4 feet long, something like that. So this is 2 to 3 feet too long for that. So it would be, somewhere between 50 to whatever percent of this size. With it being so wide though, this is something that I didn't talk about in the video, and I meant to, I just never said it to the camera when I was testing the thing. And it's something that I didn't think about until I started testing it. You know how the blade, you can see in the slow motion, the blade was turning when I was cutting through stuff. So when I go through something, it would turn like that. And there was a couple comments where people said that it's because the blade is so long and so thick that it makes it rotate. So if my blade angle when I'm cutting into something isn't absolutely perfect and even, then it could, and because the blade is so thick, as soon as I was a little bit off, it would cause the blade to want to veer because there's so much pressure against the body of the sword, not just on cutting part, which is why swords are incredibly thin. And this doesn't work that well as one because it's an 1.25 inches thick, which is outrageously thick. I mean, and I can't remember how much the typical sword thickness is. I looked it up at one point, but this is many times thicker than what a sword should ever be to be reasonably functional. So that's why I was turning a lot. At least that's what one person said. The other thing is, and this is something I realized the very first time I cut with it, when I first hit that that water jug. When I hit it, I could feel it twist. Because the blade edge is so far away from the handle, you have, 6 inches of distance where the force that blade is experiencing is trying to torque the handle. And with the handle being round on those first couple things, or on the first water jug. Actually, I can't remember if I put the things on before. Whether I put those aluminum straps on here or not to give me some indexing on the handle didn't matter, because I could feel it trying to twist and flip over in my hands. So I had to hold on to it really tight when I cut through stuff. And that's another reason why the watermelons actually worked, because when I cut through those, I had my hand on the back of the sword, and that gave me way more rotational stability on the sword to be able to keep it stable as it went through those watermelons. And accuracy and all that. But yeah, this sword makes no sense in many respects because that blade is so far away from the handle. I mean, typically on a sword, your handles, the center line of your handle would only be, I mean, at most probably 1.5 inches away from the blade edge. And here, it's just over 5 inches. So just a hair over 5 inches away. So that's a significant increase. You're talking, 3.5 times, whatever times, as far away from the widest sword. So that's why it's so difficult to cut straight through stuff. Dwarven sword from Skyrim. I won't sell this one, but I would do a commission. The Infinity Sword of Fortnite. Skyrim helmet. That would be cool. It would be fun to do a helmet. I do like the Avengers. I like DC stuff a lot more. Not necessarily the movies. I like DC comic books more. Ooh, the plasma whips from Iron Man 2. I think somebody's already making those. I can't remember who right now. I'm almost positive I saw somebody making those. And they're... Did I? It was either that or Doc Ock's arms. I can't remember now. But I remember I saw something very similar to that, and they were amazing. And I was like, well, I'm not going to build that because they're building a really awesome one. If I had to rebuild it now, what changes would I make? I would change, like I said earlier, I would do I would probably do like the maple veneer on the outside, but I think on the commission that I've gotten to build one of these for someone, the guy that commissioned me to make one of these for him is a swordsman. He's been fencing all his life. He's very into swords. He does beard cutting and like all this stuff. The guy knows what he's doing. So I want to try to make his better than mine is. And I think what I'm going to do is implement a couple of very small changes to make it better. Instead of using a fiberglass layer initially, I think I'm going to lay up a large sheet of carbon fiber, a single sheet, and actually impregnate it with resin and make that first. And then I will cut out panels for the flat parts. I'll fill the foam with foam. I'll sand it flat. I'll get the perfect shape of the sword. And then I will cover everything with individual panels of carbon fiber on the outside to bridge any soft spots or gaps like I had on this. But if I do it that way and then adhere it to the foam core, it will it'll be far flatter than it was when I did it, where I laid up the fiberglass on this and tried to pull it tight because I still had dips in it. So that's the major change. But as far as the I-beam is concerned and everything else, this thing is outrageously strong. I wouldn't change any of that. I feel like those were all really sound ideas that kept this thing from having any problems whenever I used it. If I replaced the lead in the handle, it would be more balanced if I used tungsten, but tungsten is outrageously expensive, like really, really expensive, especially to get custom shapes like that. So to get a, oh man, I can't think what it was, 22 millimeter, no, yes, it's 23 millimeter internal diameter in the handle, in the carbon fiber tube that I used for the handle. So to get a specifically 23 millimeter carbon fiber rod, or even something really close to that, and then cast lead around it to fill out the rest of it or whatever, a tungsten rod like that would cost an incredible amount of money. I can't remember how much the parts were that the hacksmith showed me when I was up there when he put tungsten parts into his Thor's hammer, for the tungsten Thor's hammer. Because he has the heaviest Thor's hammer in the world because it's filled with tungsten. I think it's over 100 pounds, and it's 1-to-1 scale. Thing's unbelievable. He showed me a piece of tungsten, and he told me what the cost was, and I remember him saying $5,000 for that piece of tungsten, but I'm not positive if that's right or not. Tungsten's not cheap. And when I say expensive, I mean like thousands. So it'd be far too expensive for me to do that on this. If I filled all the foam with lead, no one would be able to pick this up. I would consider building one for someone. I actually have someone that did commission me to make one already. I'm not sure why the person said the sword has 2 different weights. Tungsten is really heavy. If you're talking about the 2 different weights that I talked about compared to the build video compared to this video, it's because in the build video, I said that the final weight of the sword was going to be whatever it was, 10 pounds something. That's because at that point I just put lead shot down into the handle with epoxy, and the balance point was just too far forward. It was kind of outrageous how much effort it took to hold the sword, and when I doubled the amount of weight that I had in it in lead by casting the pommel and the handle, it significantly changed my ability to hold and use this. I mean, I'm not the strongest person in the world by any means, but I know I'm stronger than like a significant portion of my friends. So I feel like I can do pretty well with it, but at the same time, it felt so awfully front heavy, even with the lead shot in the handle. I knew I had to change something if I was going to use it, even remotely close to what Cloud does in the game. Like, I wanted to be able to pull off some of the stuff, and I had to change it. There was no way, because the balance point was just too far forward. So when you pick it up and it weighs 10 pounds, it doesn't feel like much, as long as it's perfectly vertical over your hand and you're just holding it there, you're not moving it. But I talked about it, but I didn't get to explain fully the moment of, the moment of inertia, or whatever they call it on swords. Basically, it's the measurement of where the balance point is on the sword and how much the sword weighs versus, where you're holding it and how much leverage you can put into it. Like, it calculates those and tells you, like, effectively the amount of force that you're going to have to put into the sword to make the thing move around. And with the balance point being further out, even though I added another 1.5 pounds, a little over 1.5 pounds to it, it made a significant difference in making the sword feel far lighter. Like, noticeably, like, huge difference in its lightness. So, kind of strange that you add 1.5 pounds and it feels like it weighs 10 pounds less. Ooh, rocket-powered batarangs. Well, I don't have the ability to make those anymore, so I couldn't sell them if I wanted to. I do want to do the Aquaman thing. I want to build Aquaman's trident too, but I don't know how much interest there would be in that. And I don't want to do one that's a replica from anything. I want to do my own design of trident so I can use it when I become Aquaman. How could you get a hold of the hacksmith? Oh man, that's a good question. I think the best way would be through the contact form on his website. I'm pretty sure that's how the best way to get in communication with him, because most people aren't willing to put in the time and effort to find the website, look through the contact information, and see what they should do. So that's kind of the way that you get a hold of people like him. Because you're talking about someone that's, coming up on 10 million subscribers. A lot of people are trying to contact him through a lot of different ways all the time. I can't imagine how overwhelming that would be. Yeah, I do want to do small, low-cost problem-solving type projects again. I thoroughly enjoy making those videos. People seem to really enjoy or resonates with them when I make these big, crazy projects. And doing the small problem-solving type projects, typically I don't get enough content that I think is really good to be able to make a video that's long enough that I get any views on it. If you look back across my last videos, you'd see that anytime I make a video that's shorter, it has a quarter or less views compared to the ones that are longer. So typically that's the case. So not saying that the algorithm's doing that, but it kind of seems like a pretty decent sample size to point to that being the case. Can you make zero Borderlands sword? I don't know what that is, but I might be able to. The Full Metal Buster sword, I believe, Kyle Jenkins, you were talking about Pretty Hate Machining's Buster sword. His weighed 123 pounds, and he could barely pick it up. And they had one of the world's strongest men try to wield it on Demolition Ranch's channel. And that guy could hardly do it. He could pick it up, but he could barely pick it up enough to let it drop. And it's not because the world's strongest man can't pick up 123 pounds, it's because you're basically picking up 123 pounds on the end of a stick. So he had a handle, he did his almost exactly to scale. His sword blade wasn't quite as wide, but that's because he couldn't, I can't remember in the video. I watched it, but it was a while ago. I think he couldn't get a plate of Hardox that was as big as what the sword is supposed to be. Which is why his is just off from being perfectly accurate. Other than that, he did an awesome job on it. But with it being an accurate to scale thing, I got off track. And holding the handle down here, you have the same problem where your balance point, because the handle's nothing, your balance point is going to be the middle of the sword. So imagine holding a broomstick with two hands, and then near the end of the broomstick, I mean, I don't know how long, maybe a broomstick's 6 feet long, so 2 feet from the end of the broomstick-ish, you hang 123 pounds on that broomstick, and then you try to move it around. If somebody could make that much weight sit there on the broomstick, and the broomstick wouldn't break, then you have to try to move it around like that. And it's, I mean, that's approaching impossible. It's really just, and it doesn't matter how strong you are. Which is why I did that whole section in this video where I held it in the garage and I said it's 100 pounds of torque on your hand. It really is 100. As soon as the sword started to lift off the table, I was looking at the weight, I was approaching 90 pounds, and right when it started to lift off the table, I didn't get it to straight out from the vise because I had the vise propped just below the collet, and I had the hook right at the top of the collet, which is where my hand sits when I hold it. So I had like the 2 points that are leveraged on my hand. Right when it started to come off the table, it went over 90 pounds and it aired out the thing. So it's probably almost exactly 100 pounds of torque to hold an 10-pound 11-ounce sword one-handed, which gives you a really good idea. And that's not even counting the amount of force that's being put down on the other side, you know, the other amount of force that's the leverage. So you're supporting 100 pounds with this part of your hand, this, you know, that bit on your thumb is holding up 100 pounds. And then your pinky and ring finger are pulling down, you know, not, what would it be? Not 100 pounds. They'd be pulling down, you know, 89 pounds. So you're pulling down 89 pounds with this part of your hand, and you're pushing up 100 pounds with this part of your hand. It's a significant amount of force to be able to hold this sword with one hand, and it's only 10 pounds, 11 ounces. If you go any heavier than this, that's why, I mean, Michael Cthulhu was not a small guy. I can't remember how much his sword weighed. I think he did say it in one video, and I want to say that it was 50 pounds, or 60 pounds maybe. If you're talking 5 times this weight, that would be unbelievably difficult to move around with. And you can see he struggles. And he even had this guy on there to swing his Buster sword around that was gigantic. I mean, the guy was huge, huge bodybuilder, like a monster human being. And that guy had a really hard time using it too. It wasn't as hard as the Pretty Hate Machining dude with his sword with the World's Strongest Man, but it was close. build a bear, only electronic and robotic. Oh, I have a question for you guys. What should I make from Cyberpunk 2077? Because that, I don't know what to make from that. I haven't decided yet. COVID makes it difficult for me to get stuff. It's all the time. It's a problem. Order stuff online, it gets super late. I can't go, like the stores that I typically shop at to get stuff, except for hardware stores, are all closed. So I can get some, but yeah, it's a pain. It's a pain. I don't have a Fallout 4 cannon you can buy, unfortunately. I don't know how I'd even ship that thing. It is gigantic. It's huge. I'd have to put that in a crate to ship it. I feel like it wouldn't even be worth it because the crate would be so expensive. The commission work would depend on the build. This, I don't want to say the price live, just because I feel like that's not couth, but this would be super expensive. To give you an idea of what the, like, this literally takes hundreds of hours to make, and it's about $1,000 in materials to make it. Like, carbon fiber is not cheap, neither is titanium. So, starting price on it is very expensive. And the size of titanium that I got for the blade edge isn't available anymore. So if I'm going to do another one on top of the commission that I'm already doing, I haven't been able to find, because I was thinking somebody else might want to make one too. So I was trying to find the titanium that I got for these two swords, or something like it, and I haven't been able to find it. So the cheapest piece of titanium that I'd be able to cut sword edges from was like $300. So yeah, this is not cheap as it sits. It's not. The fusion sword, whew, man, that's too difficult. I mean, it's not too difficult. I could do it. It would just take too much time. Forearm mantis blade from 2077. That sounds cool. I don't know what it is, but I'm gonna look it up. Electromagnet. Geode. I don't know what that says. I'm sure. Sword the size of a plane's wing being expensive to make. 0%. Yeah. Yeah. It is. Honestly, it felt like I was swinging around an airplane wing. I'm not sure what a basic batarang would be. The hacksmith has the ability to cut out batarangs very quickly. I think he might sell them. I'm not positive. He does have all the files for those. If he is selling them or wanted to sell them, he could definitely do it. I don't have anything to make them in any sort of reasonable period of time. I would have to charge an outrageous amount of money to make a batarang, just because I would have to cut it out with an angle grinder and then file it into shape by hand. The gun sword. I thought about it. Mike with Cthulhu made an amazing one, so I don't really have a desire to, because I feel like he peaked the market. Like, no one's going to make one better than he did. His is awesome. So there's no reason for me to try to what do you call it? Improve on perfection. I do have the Halloween costume, the reindeer shirt. I have a new idea for the ugly Christmas sweater, but it would get fully demonetized on YouTube, so I probably won't do that on YouTube. Maybe I'll do it for Patreon or something. As far as I know, comic book companies don't go after people like Disney does for infringing on intellectual property or anything like that, because they consider all of the things that people do that are related to superheroes, the art and everything, they consider it free advertisement. And I think historically that's the way it's always been with comic books. So they don't really go after anybody for anything unless you are mass producing something and using their intellectual property or logos or whatever as the selling point for it. So if I were to mass produce something Aquaman and then try to market it and sell it, DC would come after me then. But for me to just do a project where I talk about the stuff and I don't have anything up for sale that directly makes me money, then they don't care. On the other hand, I will have to be pretty careful about what I do in the Mandalorian video, because I think Disney is pretty avid about going after people. What do you call it? I can't remember. Not demonetized, content ID, like content IDing people on YouTube and, you know, stealing monetization from videos. I think they do that. I'm not positive. I haven't made anything from Disney to this point, and I haven't used any clips from their stuff, so I haven't experienced it. But they like to send cease and desist orders to people. I know that for sure. Why do I post when you're about to sleep? I try not to, you know? I want to do it at a good time for everybody. I do want to sell t-shirts at some point. I need to get around to that. I could try to contact the hacksmith for you, but that would be extremely difficult because it's hard for me to get a hold of him. So you'd have better luck if you just went and did all the different ways to try to contact him yourself. The last live stream was the same time. Yeah, sorry about that. All right. Anyway, this was a lot of fun. I've been streaming for an hour, which was my goal. But I have to do laundry tonight. I've been putting off a lot of chores that I have to get done to try to get this video edited. That's all I've done was sleep and edit video for the past however long it's been since the last video came out. I think it's been over 2 weeks now. I haven't done anything. I have dishes that I need to do from before I started editing the video. And laundry and all that stuff. So I would love to stay and talk and hang out for longer, but no, my laundry machine's not made out of carbon fiber. I wish I could stay for longer. Thanks, man. I appreciate that, Ethan. Business email. For me? Is somebody asking for me? Jairus@gmail.com? Email? Hi, I'm Euro. Yes, I would. Fan cosplays offered to make stuff for me. That was initially the plan with Ghosty Muffin. So because of all the Corona stuff going, the initial plan was she would be, it's like a trade-off, you know? She would be involved in videos. She would help me get the cosplays done. That way I could get videos out faster, and it would be one less thing. But everybody likes seeing me dress up as the character to test the thing. And I think it's a cool little thing that most other people don't necessarily do on their channels. But it does take a lot of time, because you're talking, you know, a week plus of, you know, what would typically take a cosplayer, from what I've seen, usually it takes them a while to get their stuff done, like to make a whole thing, and then they use it for pictures over a period of time, and then they do conventions with it, and they have like picture sets done with it, all this different stuff. Because it takes a long time to build one that's really good. Well, I'd still like to make one that's good, but if I'm doing one, I have to, you know, when I finish doing the build and then I get that video made and I get it posted, I don't have 7 days to build that cosplay for the next video, because it has to be done for the next video to be out. So whenever I do that cosplay, I have to get it accomplished in like 4 days maximum. So I'm taking from what I think typically takes a cosplayer round about a month to accomplish, and I'm pushing it down into 3 or 4 days, so that I have time to take that, which I have to film also, and then I have a couple days to edit it and try to get it posted for the video, because my job is to make the videos. So that's a long-winded explanation to answer a really simple question. Yes, I would take the cosplay stuff, because that was the goal with Ghosty Muffin. She's a really good cosplayer. I wanted her to make the cosplays for me. She would get exposure on my channel because her Instagram, like, she has a lot of followers on Instagram, but not as many as I do as I have followers on YouTube. Does that make sense? So she would do the cosplays for me, and then I would be able to use them in the video. She would get exposure. I tried to convince her to start a YouTube channel. She hasn't to this point. I think she'd be awesome if she did. Yeah, so that was the point of us working together, was that in the future she would be able to potentially take on that role to make those things for me, to make these videos easier to get out, and I wouldn't have to worry about making a costume each time. But as of right now, that's what I'm going to be doing, so we'll see in the future. But I mean, if somebody sent me something and it related to a project that I was doing in the future, or had done, or whatever, I would definitely do that. Yeah, that time crunch is insane, Kyle. You're absolutely right. I didn't realize how crazy it was until I started actually thinking about how quickly I'm making a costume compared to people that do costumes. Now, usually those cosplayers that take a really long time to build a costume, and their costume is significantly more extravagant than mine are. But still, mine are still not easy. Yeah, cosplays are never truly finished. I feel the exact same way. I feel like my projects are never truly finished. There's stuff that I want to touch up on this now. I have to get started on the next project, so I have to finish projects because that's when the video's finished. But I mean, I had a rebuild video of the Power Fist where I punched my friend with a pad on, and I rebuilt that because I just couldn't let well enough alone. I had to fix it, and I had to make it better. So, yeah, totally understand that. I have no idea what you mean by "has your state gone to yellow yet?" I don't know what that is. I don't watch the news. I don't look at the news online. I didn't even know half this stuff was going on when it first started going on. Kind of started to come as a surprise. I would like to do more live streams when I'm in the middle of projects. I have ideas for doing more live streams, so this won't be the last by any means. But I do need to sign off of here. I gotta get going because I don't have a whole lot of time to get the rest of the stuff that I need to do accomplished tonight before I get to the other stuff that I need to do. But anyway, thanks for joining me. I hope I answered some of your questions. There were things that I wanted to talk about, and I'm pretty sure I got to hit all of them about this sword. Like the whole thing where it tries to twist in your hand like crazy. I don't know if I showed it in the video or not, but if you want to see how easy these are to pop out, I just printed them out at a size that made them friction fit very nicely, and then I just tuned it a little bit with some sandpaper. So I can just pull these in and out. And that tape didn't hold on to that very well, so that one keeps falling out. But they're easy to take out. And then I have ones that have holes in it to hang it on my back. Oh, that's what I was going to mention. That plate on my back, I never said anything about that. A lot of people ask me about magnets. Because this is just held on and it could slide away from the magnet, you would have to have something that was mounted in this that was equally as strong. And then you would have to use something along the lines of like a, multiple hundreds of kilograms electromagnet to get this to stay on your back. It would be really difficult because you would also have the leverage of it moving around trying to pop it off of your back, and it would be difficult to keep it from hanging straight down, which would mean that it's in the ground. It has to stay at an angle for you to be able to walk around with it because it's so long. So I just had those the printed materia slots that didn't have materia in them, and then I cut out a plate for my back and I cut slots in it for the leather belts to go through, and welded rods of metal to it, and then covered everything back there with EVA foam and painted it black or brown or whatever. I think it was black. Yeah, I think I painted it black. And I just put it on that. What you didn't see was every time I wanted to take it off for a shot, or have it on for a shot, I had to have my buddy put it on because it's really difficult to line up, because whenever you're trying to move back like that, when your shoulders move, it moves the plate at a weird angle, and it's really difficult to hold the sword, with one hand like that anyway. So trying to get it lined up and on those pegs was really hard. And getting it off was sometimes hard too, that's why I put that stock thing in there, because I thought that was funny. Anyway, yeah, I think that's the only last thing I wanted to cover. Thanks for showing up for the stream. I'm going to go now. I got to do laundry and do dishes, and I might make some food for myself tonight. Thanks for watching. See you guys Sunday, my next video. I don't know how to stop this. How do I do this? I don't know how to turn it off.